All right, welcome to the Kids Ministry Podcast today. I'm Stephanie Rogers.
And I'm Stephanie Chase.
And we are so excited to welcome our very first guest onto the podcast.
Yes, welcome.
You didn't tell me I was the very first.
Yeah, are you feeling a little nervous?
I'm very nervous now.
Well, we're excited to have Bill Emeott. He was a ministry specialist for Lifeway for many years.
17 years.
17?
Yeah.
Wow. And now he's currently the children's pastor.
Yes.
At Houston's First at the Loop.
At the Loop.
Yes. And so he has a lot of knowledge to share with us today.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about knowledge, but I have been around.
Yeah, I love it. So, Bill, before we get started, tell us what you like to do for fun.
Well, when I'm not working, because that's really what I like to do for fun. But when I'm not working, they make me take time off. I love to cruise. Oh, I love to cruise.
Where do you like to go?
Anywhere the boat's going. I'm going in December. I've got just the Caribbean. I've done that a lot. Out of Galveston, which is awesome. Not Galveston, but the fact they have a port. But in April, I'm taking my brother and sister and their spouses to Alaska on a cruise. And then I've been looking at what's next. So I love to cruise.
Ooh, is it the food that you love?
Oh, no. It's just the fact that you get on and there's nothing else you have to decide.
Do you get the internet service while you're there?
Sometimes. Not on Alaska because you're never out of the country, really. So every time you port, you can. But sometimes I've even gone and taken it as work days.
Oh, that's smart.
Cruise and really work hard on something.
Wow, that's a good way to work.
I know. They don't pay for it, but they let me have the time to do it.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
okay, well, Bill, we have discovered here at Champion Forest that we've got some behaviors going on in our classroom.
You may not have those behaviors. I don't know.
What kind of behaviors?
All the behaviors. We have 2-year-olds that are biting.
Oh.
3-year-olds that are kicking. Do you have any of those going on?
I'm sure we must.
Yes.
If you have 2-year-olds, you have biters.
Yes.
If you have 3-year-olds, you have kickers.
Yes.
Well, and we have some really sassy 5th graders.
No way.
Yes, they are.
I'm shocked. Those preteens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have those too. We do.
Well, and I think, listeners, you'll probably agree that all of us have behavior issues. No matter what age we're teaching, where we are, if we're on Sundays, Wednesdays, during the week.
And even teachers at school.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Right. There it's just something we deal with. I deal with 2 or 3 things. As a specialist at Lifeway, I would deal with 2 or 3 topics pretty consistently. One of them was children and salvation. One of them is where do you get more workers?
Yes.
And the third one consistently is help me with understanding guiding behavior in the classroom.
Yes. Well, that's why we brought you here today.
Well, I hope that I can help.
Yes, we want some help. So we are really curious about why do children behave the way they do?
Okay.
Why are they behaving this way? We've seen a lot of changes post-COVID.
Right.
Definitely.
Yes, in behavior. So tell us.
I think the first thing I would say to anybody who wanted to hear is that you need to have a plan. If you don't have a plan and you've not planned well and you've not prepared, then they have a plan and it doesn't include the life application statement in any way. So make sure that you're planning. But I do know that, or I've identified at least 7 reasons why kids sometimes misbehave. And my mantra on a lot of things in ministry is prevention is the preferred strategy. You're talking about safety and security. I'd rather prevent an issue than deal with an issue.
Right.
If you're talking about guiding behavior or discipline issues in the classroom, I'd rather prevent the behavior than deal with the behavior. So my mantra is prevention is the preferred strategy. So what behaviors are we trying to prevent? And I think that some kids are attention seekers. They, for whatever reason, need extra attention. Maybe they're not getting it at home, or maybe there's something going on in their world, or maybe it's just the way God made them. I think that as a child, I was an attention seeker. I was the 3rd son of 4 kids, and my parents were just done with it.
Yes.
Whatever you need, do it.
I don't know anything about that.
I didn't get many spankings or anything because they weren't they were just done, you know. And then my sister came along, and she was the cat's meow, and so it was all about. So if I needed attention, or if I wanted attention and I needed attention, I just kind of made my own attention, you know. And sometimes that was in the way of acting out. And I've noticed that there's kids that come into our classrooms at church who need some extra attention, and I think perhaps it's just the way God made them. And so, what are we going to do with that? You know, what are we going to do about that? My mantra, my saying, my thing is, let's lean into that and let's see what we can do to give them the attention they're seeking. Greet them at the door, you know, say their name. I have a kid I'm thinking of right now, and when I see Jack, I say, "Hey, Jack, how's it going, Jack?" Everybody see Jack's here, you know, and then he doesn't have to do his thing to get attention, to show everybody that he's here, you know, express a little appreciation towards Jack, you know, instead of saying, calm down, Jack, kind of take it a different slant and just kind of lean into that and give him a role to play in the classroom. Let him hear praise things about Jack, not always, sit down, Jack. Jack, sit down. He's a great kid, but Jack needs a little extra attention.
Yeah, and I love what you said about give him a role to play. You know, those attention seekers, give him a job. Let him act out the story. Give him areas where they really can get positive attention.
Right. When I've noticed that when I say good things about Jack in front of him to his parents, it's a big deal too, because his parents aren't used to that.
That builds up that relationship between Jack and you, Jack and the class. Yeah.
So, and it settles Jack down pretty quickly.
Yes.
A second thing I've noticed is there are kids who are trying to avoid failure. My nephew is kind of like that. Nash is a little bit like that. He would rather. There was a time. Now he's a teenager, full blown. So who knows? But when he was a kid, he would rather act out than to people find out that he didn't understand. He came to the United States as a 3-year-old. 2 or 3, and so he didn't speak the language well. So he would act out, and he'd rather be the class clown than to be the class dummy. I've seen that happen a lot of times. And so if prevention is the preferred strategy, we want to avoid the behavior instead of deal with the behavior. We need to put things, not put Nash on the spot. We need to be careful about calling on him and using terms he might not understand or he might not know. And one way you can do that is put Nash on a team. And so all of a sudden it's not Nash, what are the minor prophets? It's a group of 5 or 6 kids. What are the minor prophets? So we're not putting Nash on the scene. We're focusing on his strength, which he's real social in a group setting like that. So focus on his strengths and be encouraging to him, affirm him in the areas that he's doing really good in, and break down the material so that instead of 12 minor prophets, can you name one minor prophet?
Yeah.
And then celebrate the success. Because if you say Nash named the 12 minor prophets and he doesn't know them, he's liable to look at you and say booger. You know, and then all the kids are laughing at Nash instead of him being the dummy, because he doesn't want that. He's avoiding
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. He's the class clown.
Yes.
And so sometimes that comes out as bad behavior in a classroom.
Yes. Even when asking children to read the Bible in a group, you know, you have to be sensitive to
we're
that.
in multicultural area here, and all of our kids didn't start in kindergarten, you know, and they come in and they don't speak English well, or they certainly don't read it. Reading comes after speaking for a lot of them.
Yes.
So putting them on the spot and asking them to say Zerubbabel or read, you know.
I can't even say that.
Read whatever the word is that, you know, all the cities and places and all the things that can be embarrassing to them.
Yes, definitely. So those are 2 great suggestions. Give us another one. What's
another reason I think that kids misbehave is because they're angry. They come into the classroom angry. And we don't know their story often. I mean, in my setting, I may see kids once a week. On a great family comes in for 2 hours a week, and we can't know what that kid's bringing into our classrooms. We don't know what happened in the car coming. We don't know what their little brother did to them, or what their dad promised them when they get home, you know, for a behavior that they had in the car. But they're just angry, and I think that we need to acknowledge that at some level. There's some kids that are chronically angry. And I can think of a little girl in our ministry right now, and she never smiles.
Yeah.
She just never smiles. And I've kind of done some research on this child, and she is being raised by her grandmother, and she has to come home. She has to go see her father on weekends, and oftentimes what happens is in the parking lot on Sunday is where they do the handoff, and she gets to hear maybe arguments and conversations that she shouldn't hear to begin with, and she goes from a situation where dad wants to give her everything she asked for to a mom and a grandmom who are now trying to put structure back in her world. And she comes into our situation angry. So I think that for me, it's just acknowledging that those are feelings that she's having and reading those nonverbal signs that she brings as she walks into our suite on Sunday morning. And sometimes I just have to agree that she's going to be disagreeable. Right. And that's okay. And I love her, and I give her a hug. I give her a high five if she'll let me. Sometimes they bring that into the classroom, particularly in preschool, where they need just a space to go cool down. You know, we used to call it time out, but I'm not a proponent of time out, but I'm not against it either. But I think if we call it a cool down area, a place where you can go and just huff and puff and cool down. Sometimes a kid is starting to get all red in the face, and I like to say, hey, let's go get a drink of water. Right. Let's go to the water fountain. I don't need the water. Well, yeah, you do. Come on, let's go to the water fountain. And just a time to breathe, a time for them to cool down. I think it's important that we model good behavior in front of them. Sometimes if I'm going to be honest, I want to be mad back. I want to be angry back. I mean, you're not going to, and I try to get my back up, and I'm not going to, that's not what we need to model. We need to model, Jesus. We need to model good behavior, and I think it's important. So if we're going to prevent the problem, prevention is the preferred strategy, then we're going to need to act like that. Yeah. We're going to need to prevent that. Another one, I think.
Can I say one quick thing about that? One thing I think we've seen in our classrooms, we offer a lot of like the hammering, stations, whether it's the golf tees and styrofoam or the wood with nails, and that's kids great. Are just boom,
or even working that Play-Doh,
yes.
and you get to stand up instead of sitting in a chair and work that Play-Doh all to your heart's content and get that frustration
out. Get that aggression out and frustration. That's great.
You see that in kiddos, have that opportunity to kind of work that out. And one other thing that we've noticed, I think, is just listening. And sometimes they're going to say things that you're like, whoa. I just heard a little boy today talking about all the things that he was angry about. And I thought, wow. And just sometimes being able to get that out.
Sometimes they can't. And I have got several friends. I'm not as good at using this as my friend Kim Shelby is, but a feelings chart. What are you feeling?
Yep.
And oftentimes it's angry.
Yes.
Yep.
They can point to that and they know this is how I feel. And then you can begin to process that for yourself. As a teacher, you've got 20 other kids in the room. It's hard, but it's worth it.
Yes. Yep. Yes. All right, tell us about another one.
I think another reason that some kids misbehave is they're control seekers. They're seeking control.
Really?
And again, I tell parents this a lot, and I've said this to teachers often. The very thing that irritates you about your child is the thing that God wants to use for their good.
Amen.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about there's these kids who want to be the teacher. I was a lot like that. I mean, I would act out so that I would get in trouble and my desk would be moved next to the teacher's. And then I would set my desk up like I was a teacher, and I'd pretend like I was the teacher.
Yeah, those are some of your future leaders.
Yes. So if we're going to do this, if we're going to lean into
say that three times real fast.
the preferred strategy, then we need to lean in a little bit and give choices in our classrooms, because nobody wants to be told what to do all the time.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, and I don't, and you don't, and kids don't either, even though I think sometimes we think that's our role, is just tell them what to do. And for a lot of kids, that'll be just fine.
Right.
But for some kids, this control-seeking kid, they don't want to be told what to do. So what they want to do, what we need to do is give them some them choices. I always have two choices. I think that's a rule of thumb. You can either choose this or you can choose this.
And having two good choices, two
good
positive choices.
As opposed to you can either go home or you
yes,
or I can call your parents or you can get in line.
Exactly.
You can be in the front of the line or the back of the line, or I'm going to call your parents. You get three choices, but give them choices. I think giving the control seeker responsibility. Maybe it's timekeeper, maybe it's Bible reader, maybe it's a task that you need done, the pencil sharpener person, or whatever, to allows them to the opportunity to contribute to the experience and feel like they're a little bit in control. Now, obviously, you're in control. Don't lose control,
right?
But you know what I'm talking about. Just giving them a little bit of control.
Yes.
Yeah. Making those choices, having choices to be able to go in there and say, I can decide what I want to do. That's a big...
And it goes back to planning, because if you don't plan for choices, and a lot of our... I almost said most, but a lot of our teachers, they have a teaching plan that they're going by, and because they've not incorporated the other teachers in the classroom to plan with them, then it's just them, and the other teachers are kind of helper teachers, which is not my favorite thing. But we need options, especially if you're having some discipline issues in your classroom. Give kids options. Give kids choices. There was a book out a long time ago, You Can't Make Me, But I Can Be Persuaded.
Yes.
I think that's not exactly the title, but that was the idea. But, you give them choices, give them options, and let them make good choices that you're willing to live with, and they're willing to grow more into who God created them to be.
And if you're a new teacher, that can be hard to do because you're not used to offering choices. So anyone that's listening, if you're a new teacher, just try it a few times and get that into your vocabulary. Okay, you have a choice. You can, color at the table, or you can build with Legos.
And you might hear that phrased as redirecting the kids.
Yes.
You might hear that from other people saying, oh, just try redirection. That is offering choices.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. And it does help that
Huge.
controls seeker.
Yep.
Yes, definitely.
Another kid that comes in the room, or maybe I should say 99% of the kids that come in the room
what we got?
are energetic.
Oh, yes, my kind of kid, baby.
Yeah, that would be your kind of kid. These are kids who are just being who God created them to be.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, particularly in grade school classrooms, elementary classrooms, we want to set up this idea of them sitting at the desk and listening to us lecture and see our slideshow or whatever it is that we've done a great job of preparing. But it's just not falling into who God created them to be. And if prevention is the preferred strategy, which it is, then we want to set up classroom settings that allow for kids to move. It's a lot easier oftentimes in preschool because we know preschoolers aren't going to just sit there at the desk or work a worksheet or do a quiet project. But it's the same in grade school too.
It is.
It's been said, I can't really find where it's been proven, but it's been said that a kid will sit still about 1 minute for every year old they are.
Yes.
And I think it's relatively true. However, it may be getting more like 45 seconds for every year old they are, because they're not used to sitting still. That's not the way their world operates anymore. So you're setting yourself up for failure if you think they're going to come in and sit in rows and desks like we did in the 1970s when I was in school. I remember sitting in a fifth grade classroom, and we were all the boys. It was a boys, fifth grade boys. And we sat around the table and we would pass the Bible around. We weren't even required to bring our Bible because we passed the teacher's Bible around and everybody read the verse. And I would sit there and I would draw on the lip of that table. And if my dad could have seen me doing that, I would have gotten a different kind of lip when I got home because that was not what, but I was bored and I needed to get up and I needed to move. And this one kind of plays into the sixth one that I've noticed is that kids are bored sometimes. And that's on me as a teacher if they're bored. Now, I recognize I can't. You got 20 kids, you may have 20, you definitely have 20 different personalities and you may have at least 6 or 7 different learning preferences.
Right.
But you plan sessions that are with the kid in mind. So we're moving, we're getting up, we're letting them express themselves, we're letting them participate. I happen to have had the privilege of sitting in kids' worship here this past Sunday, and Stephanie was the Bible story teacher. Stephanie Chase was the Bible story preacher on Sunday, and she chose three kids that came up and participated in the Bible story. So everybody didn't get to participate, but the minute that my friend went up there, then I'm watching, I'm listening, and that allowed them to get energy out. Music can help get energy out. Getting up, participating, clapping, wiggling. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, let's stop. And let's wiggle your head, and wiggle your shoulders, and wiggle your hands, and wiggle your hips, and they get funny.
Hey,
and
watch
get
it, Bill.
I know it. Wiggle your knees, wiggle your toes. Okay, now let's sit back down.
Yes.
Because you can tell they need to get some energy out. So planning with the kids in mind and providing an atmosphere so that they can, in preschool, we would not expect 3-year-olds to sit in large group for 15 minutes.
You would be so disappointed.
You would be
them
disappointed.
to sit- yeah.
And then you would be telling us about behavior problems in my 3-year-old class. We know that they're energetic. We know that if we don't lean into that and allow personal application and name dropping and listening questions, they're going to become bored.
Yes.
Yep.
And you know what, Bill? This is really interesting because to meet the needs of the energetic, bored child, it doesn't always have to be something loud
No.
and, really exciting. I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were doing the creation story, and we just gave groups of about 20 kids, I think there were 200 kids in the room, a pile of just consumable items, coffee filters, pipe cleaners, toilet tissue rolls, all the things, a roll of tape and a bottle of glue. And literally, we kept saying, well, should we start? Because the room was quiet. 200 kids, all just going 90 miles an hour with all of their junk.
Building,
creating, whatever it was. And we kept saying, well, let's just give them 5 more minutes because it was so wonderful. And then we just kept waiting and waiting. And so, what you're saying, they were not bored.
No.
And they were using all that energy that God gave them to create on their own. So,
And they're all doing it the way God created them to do it. Because some of our friends are really chatty and they talk a lot, but those are going to be our chatter talker speakers one day. And some of the control people, they're going to be our leaders one day. And so they all have a purpose for the things that they're doing at the age that they're at.
That's
they
right.
are.
The last one that I've identified is the uninformed child.
Oh.
Now, what I mean by that is that kids, people in general, don't live up to our expectations because they don't know what we expect. So they're uninformed about what the classroom policies or norm or rules are, especially if you're reaching unchurched families. They don't know the difference between the worship center and the gymnasium at school. They just know everybody's gathered, and it's a big, crazy place. So let's jump the pews, or jump the chairs or whatever it is you have in your worship center. But I think we need to be intentional about letting the kids know what the rules are. Now, I'm not there's 10 commandments and 10 rules.
Right.
I'm not that guy, but I do think that there's one rule that usually fits all things, and it's we will respect each other and each other's belongings.
Yes.
So if we can help kids recognize, okay, are you being respectful to Mr. Bill, or am Mr. Bill being respectful to you?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. We have to model proper behavior. That kind of settles a lot of it. So I don't think we have to memorize the 10 commandments and Mr. Bill's 10 rules, but I think they do need to understand that there are rules. And I think multiple intelligence plays into a lot of these things because kids learn differently. And so having the rule up on top of the wall is probably not going to be everybody's thing, particularly in preschool. Let them act out. What does that look like? Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Let's ponder it. Let's talk to our neighbor about it. Let's draw the rule or whatever, and just using multiple intelligences to help them understand what the classroom rules are. I think we can mentor it as well. One of the things that works really well is if you've got a kid that's really challenging, just assign an additional leader. Now, that's kind of sad because we don't have a lot of additional leaders, right?
Right. But the Lord's providing. We're praying and we're asking.
Yes,
right.
He's bringing them. He's bringing them.
Yeah. And so, if you can pair up an adult with the child that's struggling, if you can pair up maybe a child that's not struggling with a child that is struggling, that could be helpful. Ask the question, what did I say and what did you do? Because they may not recognize what happened. A friend of mine, Mark Jones, a friend of ours, Mark Jones has this thing he does. He talks about call and response, and I use that sometimes, but he does this one. And I don't know, it may not be a good one, but I think it's fun. He hollers, "Let me tell you what I want, what I really, really want."
I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want.
Come back and say, "Oh, tell us what you want, what you really, really want." And then he tells them what he wants because he's gotten their attention. And then he says, "Capiche?" And they say, "Kaposh."
Oh, I love it. That's great.
It's fun. And just making sure they understand that this is the expectations. So I think that kids misbehave for reasons, and if we can identify some of the reasons that's causing the poor behavior, then we can address those.
Yes. Well, and most kids, Bill, they want to do what you want them to do.
Most kids do.
They do, the majority of them. And if they know it, and then you praise them here or there, they'll fall right in line and, do what's expected.
It just takes a little bit of work.
Yep. And that's relationship building.
Yes. And so listeners out there, he's given us quite a few different kinds of kids to think about. So I know in my mind, I'm thinking about kids at our church who may fall into these descriptions. And so listeners, you may want to think about your kids. Think about, okay, I'm recognizing the controller. I'm recognizing the energetic one. And begin to create some strategies on what am I going to do to be able to help this child to become all God created them to be. And you probably have some more tips for us.
Well, the first tip I would say is make sure you pray about it.
Amen.
God is more concerned about our success than we are.
Amen.
And we need to be praying for the students on a daily basis. And we need to be praying particularly for the ones that may be causing us some grief. And then pray that God would give us wisdom. My mom used to tell us, and she had a plaque that hung in our house that said, "Prayer changes things." And you know what it usually changes is not the child. It usually changes the adult.
Yes.
And it changes me. It changes my heart. And I could tell you time and time again where I've had teachers come to me and say, "He really did change the way he is acting." And I'm like, "No, he didn't. God changed your heart about this kid."
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think that we need to make sure that we dislike the behavior and not dislike the child. I think it's a big deal. I think that I don't like it when we start naming children and saying, Jack, or whatever it is. And we got a bunch of Jacks, so nobody's going to know which Jack I'm talking about.
Jack won't behave. Yeah. Jack won't stop jumping off the table.
Exactly. We love the child. The Bible doesn't tell us to like all the kids.
Right.
But it does command us to love everybody.
We got to love them.
We've got to love them. I think being consistent is important.
Yes.
But if it's not going to be good next week, then don't do it this week. I think modeling behavior is important. If they can't sit on the table, then get your bum off the table.
Yeah, amen, brother.
So
Teachers,
true.
Did you hear that? Get up off those tables.
Yep.
And if they can't have coffee, then why are you bringing your coffee in?
Yes,
now,
and if they can't be on their cell phone,
then
we
don't
shouldn't be on our
yours.
cell phone.
I think it's important that we're fair with kids. I do have my favorites, but I cannot allow. I'm not going to lie. There are, you just do, but you can't allow Mitchell to do something that you're not going to allow Jack to do.
Yes.
It's very important. We've talked about providing choices. I think that's important as well. I think it can be a solution to many, many of the problems we face. I think that it's important not to embarrass kids in front, and that's something I struggle with. Because I think if you're going to act like that in public, you're going to get what you deserve in public, but that's not right, and it leads to all the wrong things. Yeah. It makes you look bad, and if that weren't enough, it really hurts the self-esteem of a child, and I think that's important modeling proper behavior. We've got to model proper behavior. And then I would say, finally, be generous with praise.
Mm-hmm.
There's never been a child that God's created that you can't find something to say, something good to say about that child. And I think that we need to look for those, especially with those Jacks in our ministry.
Yes.
We need to look for what's really good about him and praise him. And it won't be long before he recognizes, like you said, Stephanie, that he gets the attention he's needing or looking for in a positive way instead of all the negative way. So I think it's important to praise kids. If we don't do that, then who is?
Yes.
Then who is? And if they don't receive that unconditional love at church, then where do they?
Right.
So,
and we have a saying that we use at Champion Forest: rules minus relationship equals rebellion.
Oh yeah. Well, and you know the old adage, they don't care what you know until they know that you care.
That's right. Yeah. And that relationship with kids, it's huge. Just spending time, just sit down on the floor with them. And like you were talking about angry, sometimes it's just sitting beside them while they're angry. You don't even have to say anything. Just let them have their feelings, but they know you're there. And just to say, hey, I love you.
Yep.
And
there's nothing you can do that can change that.
Right.
Because a lot of kids don't hear that from anyone.
That's so true. And, just playing with them because
even a simple deck of Uno will make a big difference.
It changes their behavior when you sit down and play with them.
And then another child sees you playing Uno with them, comes alongside, and all of a sudden you got some friends where you didn't have friends before sitting around because of behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Bill, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yes. Listen,
very
if you're
wise.
He is. If you're a teacher at Champion Forest, here's what we're going to do. And for any teachers out there, right, who are listening from any church, any organization, we just want to encourage you to love kids.
Right.
And know that they've got behaviors. Because I don't know about you guys, but I got some behaviors.
I do too.
And also that God created every one of them.
That's right.
Yes, special and unique for a purpose.
Yep.
And part of these behaviors are going to bring about some great things in their lives as long as we help lead and guide them.
Right.
Right. And that's what God put us here for.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget that God does put us in the lives of these children because he needs us to help lead and guide them even when it's hard. We have a little boy in our ministry right now, and when he came in first grade, I thought I was going to string him up by his toes. I was like, what is wrong with this child, right? And now he is in third grade, and I know I shouldn't say this, I'm not saying names, but he's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
That happens.
Yes, and because sometimes it's a season of behavior.
Yep.
And it could be a season because of what you said, things going on in their lives, in their family. It can be a season of development, just different seasons. So be patient, teachers.
Right.
Be patient.
And as a teacher, just you being there and loving them, you are doing a good job. You're doing a great job as a teacher because you're showing up. You're there, you're in their life, you're consistent in their life, and there may be no one else in their life that's saying, Jack did a great job today to their parent, or we loved having Jack come to church today. And there might be nobody else saying that about that kid. But when you say it, that means so much to that kid. That could be the reason he begs his parents to come to church again the next Sunday. So
I know some days you're thinking, couldn't he just be sick this one Sunday? Let's be honest, right? But what you said is true, consistency.
Yep.
So if you're a teacher and on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, wherever you are, listen, be there, be present. Don't you be calling in sick. Yes.
And try to serve every week if you can.
Yes.
That makes the difference.
Yes.
When you're having behavior issues in your class, you being consistent to be there every week may be a game changer in the classroom for that child.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I'll share one more thing and then we'll quit talking because Steph and I get all fired up about what you're talking about, Bill. But we had one little boy that just was constantly giving us issues and struggles. And I scheduled with his mom to go have lunch with him at school. And let me tell you, after that, he was a perfect angel at church. You know, that made all the difference in the world. And sometimes it's just that spending time with them one-on-one and letting them know you're a real person.
Right, and that you love them. And that it's more than just at church. Yeah. You know, maybe it's going to see them play baseball or whatever it is that they might be interested in. So that's a really good tip if you've got a kid who you're struggling with. What could you do outside of the Sunday school, the whatever session that you're having, to let them know you care about them differently than just their behavior at church. And then when they get there, all of a sudden you're friends. They want to make sure that you're happy with them, and they want to work hard for good behavior and all those things. So that's a great tip.
Yes.
It could be something as simple as sending a video of saying, hey, I can't wait to see you on Sunday.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Just and it's so quick. Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah. All right. Well, teachers, we know you got behaviors. I mean, not you personally.
Well,
I mean, you might, but we also know the kids in your class have behaviors. We've gotten some good tips, some good understanding of why we have these behaviors. So from here on out, let's get after it. Let's love kids and let's put these tips into practice.
We're going to do it.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.